Okay, we're recording.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a workshop to discuss or to review Western Lane Ambulance District Strategic Plan as well as the SVFR Strategic Plan. Looks like we have somebody coming in now. So if you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to start off. Dina, you got your flag?
I do.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
the
United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It looks like Director Polisi may be joining us.
Yay!
So Dina, go ahead with roll call. Start with Western Lane though. I think Jim's coming. There he is.
All right, Western Lane, if you can all unmute. It looks like you are. So Director Russell. Here. Director Murphy.
Here.
Director Yesney.
Here.
Director Farnsworth.
Here.
Director Webb.
Here.
Sayus LaValle. Director Green.
Here.
Director Hickson. Director Burns. Director Polisi.
Here. Sorry for being late.
Oh, you're fine.
Director Spade.
Here.
Western Lane Fire and EMS Authority, Director Murphy.
Here.
Director Spade.
Here.
Director Russell.
Here.
And Director Polisi.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum for all three entities.
Thank you, Dina. So greetings, everyone.
Greetings.
Oh,
Welcome to our workshop on strategic plan review. Tonight, what I hope to accomplish is to just simply review our current strategic plans, refresh everyone's memories as to what the districts were thinking 4 to 5 years ago. And if you were here when they were first being developed, certainly chime in if you've got your own opinions. I'm going to give you my opinion on what I feel we've accomplished or what we haven't accomplished. We're going to look at the results from the 2018 update, which was the last update for the strategic plans. And then I'm going to give you staff's recommendations on what we should do in the near future. And that's where boards get to shine, planning for the future. So I'm going to run through the initiatives. I'll share my screen, so it'll be there. If you could have downloaded them from onboard, that's fine if you want to follow along, but I'll share my screen and I'll show those, the strategic plans on there. I'm hoping to be out of here by 6:30, 7 at the latest. Really, this is just a review. There's not going to be any decisions made. We can certainly discuss if you agree or disagree that we've met one of the objectives or completed those. But I don't think it's going to be a long evening. At least I hope not. So let me share my screen. Oops, there we go. So you should be seeing SVFR strategic plan.
Yes.
Awesome. Right. Good. I think it's important to keep in mind too that okay, we're just
you couple.
Yeah. That shouldn't have happened. So which screen are you seeing now?
I see Sam and me.
Yeah, I see Jim now.
Hey, Jim.
Okay.
I see Rick.
Okay, so it's going, okay. Hey, Dina, I think that maybe you're the host, right?
Yeah, I made you a co-host.
Okay. Okay, there we go. So now do you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I haven't given you all. I didn't get any of that, John. If you were asking if we could send it to you, we did. We emailed it to all the directors earlier today. Oh, I don't know if Mary used your post insurance. Hey, Dina, can you email that to John's post insurance email address?
I didn't get it because I think you sent it to Mary and Mary created it.
Okay.
So just, you want to forward it to me, I can.
Just grab it from onboard, save it to your computer and send it to him if you would.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So there were several strategic initiatives, goals, and objectives that were agreed upon, adopted by the board. I'm just going to go through SVFR first. No reason other than I just have it up here first. So the first initiative was in services. Service delivery will address the immediate and long-term needs of the community served. These resources shall be allocated in a manner that ensures transparency and maximum effectiveness and efficiency. And the first goal was to develop a standard of cover and deployment plan. And essentially a standard of cover is really how are you going to deploy your resources, where your station is going to be, where your people are going to be, how quickly are you going to be able to respond by doing that. And part of that process is you have to have data, and that's what this goal 1A, really has to deal with, is developing and obtaining proper data. And you'll see some colors here, and I've color coded the objectives. Green meaning that I feel is completed or ongoing progress is sufficient. Yellow means it's not completed, but some progress has been made. And red is no progress. And you'll see right off, we start with a red. You won't see a lot of red in any of these strategic plans. We've been making a lot of progress. But this one is red, the ability to obtain and utilize reliable data. We're having a lot of problem with that, and that's not a personnel issue, it's a software issue. Getting accurate times. We're doing okay, but I think we are trying to develop a more robust system. We can get more accurate response times. And working through, I know Matt's working really hard with ImageTrend, our software developer, to get those times. But those times are important, and so we're still developing that. And so that has the first 4 objectives have to do with that data. So we're working hard on that. The 5th objective, mutual aid agreements. Those are all up to date, both with Lane County and Douglas County. Mainly through the fire defense boards. And again, we're just talking SVFR. We'll do Western Lane here in a second. And then 6 and 7 have to do with developing a standard of cover plan, deployment plan. You'll see that there was the suggestion that go out and hire outside expertise to develop that plan. That wasn't done. It was attempted internally, and we do have a draft standard of cover. It's a very rough draft. It's something that I think is very important for this department, and we're going to start working on trying to completing that. So that will say, essentially you're doing, looking at station locations, you're looking at the number of personnel that you have. It's a general risk assessment. So it is very important. And then you set your goals for response time. So we'll be working on that.
That's good.
Okay.
So Mike, this is Sam. I got a question. On that
Go
first one, you say reliable data. What kind of data are you actually talking about specifically?
Talk about response times. General, how many people were on the call? Were they all entered in? But mainly it's response time. When did we receive the call? When did we respond? How long did it take us to get there? And by that, you can set, if you set standards, we want to be on scene within 8 minutes of a structure fire 90% of the time. And then we can hold ourselves to that standard. We're not going to be punished if we don't meet it, but if that's the standard we want to meet, then we need to devote resources to meeting that standard. And so those are standards that would be decided, agreed upon by the board. And for the Western Lane side, it would be how quickly do we want to be on scene for a cardiac arrest?
Right.
And then it would vary throughout your district. I mean, somebody that lives up in the Swiss Home Deadwood area, they're not going to get a 5 or 6 minute response.
Sure.
Unfortunately, that's just because of where they live. So all that has to be taken into account. Good question. So goal 1B is create, adopt, and implement an emergency operations plan. That's an easy one. That's done at the time. In fact, we're even starting a review process to update our emergency operations plan. The city hired Jim Yao to update and review the plan. He's working with WLAD, Western Lane Emergency Operations Group. And just as an aside, Jim is also the new chief for Swiss Home Deadwood. So we've been working a lot with Jim as far as how Swiss Home and SVFR can work better together. And you'll hear more about that in a little bit. So goal 1C, update, adopt, and implement the regional natural hazards mitigation plan. Again, this is an easy one. It's completed. You see yellow there because that says adopt the updated plan. The plan was never adopted by the fire department. It wasn't adopted by any fire departments, and this is a Lane County plan. It was adopted by the city of Florence and other regional or other cities and the county as well. So I think at the time this goal was put into place, the plan was just being developed. So I count this as being complete, even though it's yellow there. We didn't adopt it.
So
There's no
Chief,
reason for us to adopt it. Yeah, go ahead.
what is a natural hazards mitigation plan? What
So that'd be like tsunami, earthquake,
Gotcha.
along those lines.
Okay.
It's a 400 to 500 page document. If anybody has trouble getting to sleep, that's a good one. So goal 1D, maximize strategic partnerships. Again, a mixture of green and yellow. So with the first one, enhance the working relationship with Western Lane Ambulance and other EMS providers. I think we are doing that definitely with Western Lane and SVFR. Initially through the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement we had, and now with the authority. We're certainly training together more. We're starting to explore sharing resources. It's easy to say we're going to share resources. Just how do we do it has been a lot of fun to try and figure out. So I think we're making progress. And certainly as we look down the future, and we're not going to discuss it tonight, but as we look down the future, we're going to be looking for new ways to share resources. You do see a yellow there with the current or enhance the CERT program. We don't have a lot of information on the CERT program, especially now with COVID. I have been meeting with some of our citizen providers and helpers. Frank McNulty is in charge of the CERT program, or used to be. You'll see responsible there, it has a CERT coordinator and a fire marshal. And that's one of the people that's no longer here is the fire marshal at the time that this plan was adopted. So I think we've sort of dropped the ball maybe a little bit on our CERT program. It's an important program. It's a program that needs to be robust in our area. So we'll be working on that. Third one, improving mutual aid efforts with surrounding fire departments. And pretty much that means Swiss Home, Deadwood, and Mapleton. Other than that, our typical mutual aid responders are coming from Reedsport, which is quite a long ways to come from. But they have been willing to do that, and we have used them in the past. With our local neighbors, there's really no interest on Mapleton's part to work with us. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, they're taking care of their own citizens, and that's fine. Has been a lot of interest in the Swiss Home Deadwood area. Again, with the new chief, even the past chief really wanted to work a lot with us. Geographically,
Hey, Chief.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chief, I got a quick question. How about
Sure.
Yachats? Have they discussed anything at the north end of the district?
Yeah, we haven't. We do. We'll respond, calls that are along the boundaries there. We'll respond with them. I don't know a lot about them. I do know the mayor up there. He's a good guy.
Okay.
I think that we could certainly work more with them. Both Reed Sports and Yachats, they're just so far away that we haven't reached out to them. But that's not a bad idea.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, their mayor he's a very active Rotary member, so we see him every week.
Good.
We do have agreements with them though for mutual aid.
Yeah. And we do have with Swiss Home Deadwood, we just started talking yesterday, Matt and I, with Jim Yao, the chief up there, is possibly sharing some volunteers with them. And I think it's a very exciting opportunity for us. We want to build up our numbers. They want volunteers that are experienced. So what we're thinking about we might be doing is that allow their volunteers to volunteer with us. They become SVFR volunteers. They have to meet our requirements, all our certification requirements. And then they can sign up for some shifts like we've been doing with our current volunteers, either 12 or 24-hour shifts. So we're still working with that, and you'll hear more about that in the future. And the very last one, number 4, continue working with surrounding agencies. And all those agencies are part of the Western Lane Emergency Operations Group, WLAD. And we're certainly a very active member. I think we're going to take a more active role in there as well, more of a leadership role. WLAD certainly has been very active with the pandemic and has been doing very well with that.
Say, Chief, one question there. It says the city of Florence. Does that include the police department? Because I noticed it wasn't listed.
Oh, absolutely, the police department.
Okay.
In fact, before the pandemic, Tom Turner and I had coffee every week just to talk how things are going.
Right.
So we hope to start doing that again here very shortly. So goal 1E, fire prevention, public education. Again, this is going extremely well. So at the time this plan was adopted, there was a fire marshal in place. He has since left, and now we have a fire prevention officer. He's not a fire marshal yet. He doesn't have those certifications and qualifications required by the state. Very close. In fact, I just have to review his certs now. He actually may have met all the requirements. But and that's Tony Miller. We're developing him into a fire marshal. And once he does reach that level, we want to move him into an exempt position that will be pulling him out of the bargaining unit. We're thinking about making it at a division chief level. So compensation will be a little bit higher, but then he'll lose overtime as a non-exempt or exempt. We'll move him to one of those.
That's good.
And we're working on a new job description for Tony. Director Polisi has vetted that one time. Jim knows a lot about being a fire marshal, of course. So I hope to be able to bring that to the board very soon.
And Chief, I did compare that to my previous state, California, for the qualification rollover, and it's very close. Very close. I'm not saying California standards are any better. I'm just saying that it's nice to see that there is some continuity, quite a bit of continuity.
Right. So then goal 1F is collect data and make appropriate changes to positively affect the district's ISO rating. ISO stands for Insurance Services Office. And what ISO...
That was going to be my next question, what ISO meant.
Yep. So what they do is they come out and inspect fire departments, and then they give you a rating. And then that rating is used by some insurance companies to set their rates. I think it mostly applies to businesses, some residential. I have never been able to find an insurance company that uses an ISO rating to set their rates. But this is something that almost all fire districts go through, is these annual, well, they're about every 10 years, they'll come out and inspect and give you a rating. Our current rating, we're a class 4 fire department. The highest is a class 1, so a smaller number is better. And essentially it does could save some of our maybe businesses or homeowners some money on their insurance. Again, I was hoping that John could give us some feedback on that, of whether he uses ISO ratings or not, but I'm not sure if he's still on the line.
Chief.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
John.
most of the companies that an independent agency uses figure the fire protection class as a part of the rating system. A lot of them have 12 different things they use in their rating.
Yeah.
But like you say, commercial buildings are rated, and you know, we are a 4 and a 10 is what we have, some 10s out there.
Yes.
Chief, how far are we away from a 3? Where did we miss it?
And I'm going to go through that, Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are class 4/10, which means if you're within a mile and a half of a fire station and 1,000 feet of a hydrant, you're rated class 4. So theoretically, your insurance would be lower. If you're not within a mile and a half of a fire station, but within 1,000 feet of a hydrant, you're class 10, which is a much lower rating. So at our last rating time period was May 1st, 2017. We got 67.65 points, and that's out of 105.5, which were available. And the one area that we really lacked in was and there's several areas they look at: communication, fire department, water supply,
Right.
and community risk reduction. And under fire department, they look at training, number of personnel responding, and equipment. And we really got hit hard, as all volunteer fire departments do, in number of personnel responding.
Yeah.
Unless you're at the station, they don't count you as a full responder. So
Right.
volunteer responders only get counted for 1/3 of a career firefighter. So now that we've switched to 24/7 staffing, I think we could make up, what do we need? 2.35 points to get to a class 3. So I think the next time they do inspect us, and like I said, it's usually every 10 years, although we can make a request to be inspected earlier in that time frame. So
Right.
I think we'll reach out to ISO, see if we can just talk informally to an inspector, see if we would have enough points that we can get up to a better rating.
Good.
Initiative 2, funding and finance. Financial services shall be provided in a manner that is in accordance with local, state, and federal requirements. These services will be benchmarked with industry best practices. To ensure preferred business practices and economies of scale are maintained, the finance function should be completely transparent to internal and external customers. And then goal 2A was to establish a capital improvement and capital replacement plan to prepare for the future financial needs of the district while maintaining transparency and fiscal responsibility. We do have capital replacement and facility improvement plans in place that have been approved by the board. We don't have standing committees for this or full-time committees. We appoint a committee as needed. So as you recall, in the capital plan was a replacement of one of our tenders, our water tenders. So for that, we will establish a committee. They'll start looking at some of the specs for that, help us design that. They'll have financial constraints on what we can afford, and then they will recommend a design and a manufacturer and a price, and then that'll come to the board for approval. And the last one, number 4 there, develop financial forecasting tools to align with strategic plan. Not necessarily aligning with the strategic plan, but we do have a financial tool. I think all of you have seen that. I know we're working with Director Yesney on another financial tool, prediction tool. I think early results show that it's very similar. Plans are very similar, but I think it's just nice to have 2 different plans that if they both tell us the same thing, I think I'd be much more comfortable with that. So we go to initiative 3, planning. Develop planning documents and tools that ensure the district has clear direction in the way they conduct the district's business and deliver service to the community. So this was the original encouraging the adoption of the strategic plan, that was done, of course. Review it with internal stakeholders in the community. I assume that was done. I hope it was done. I gave it a green, but I don't have proof that it was done. The third one, implement, utilize, and conduct periodic review of the strategic plan. There was a review done in the 2017-18 timeframe. I don't think any review's been done since then. It's always my recommendation that you do it December, January timeframe, and then that leads into your budget process. And we had so much going on this year, it wasn't possible to do that. But in the future, I think that's what we're going to be doing. Well, I got a yellow just because I think we could have been more active at reviewing our plan. Okay, goal 3B, develop an effective communication plan that meets the needs of all the internal and external stakeholders. Whenever there's an objective or goal with communication, if I'm color coding it, I'm always going to give it yellow because I don't think that we can communicate enough, and there's always things that we can do better, and we should be trying to do better. For this one specifically, I think there was a communication plan developed by Liz Loomis and Associates. That was in August of 2017. I'm not sure how much of that was enacted. It was a good plan, a lot of community outreach, social media, other media sources. So we'll be working on getting that up and running again. Just in general communication, we do offer a monthly seminar. We got to get back into doing that. We stopped doing it with COVID, but I think with Zoom meetings, we can certainly get that up and running again. I have been trying to be more diligent with meeting with the shifts weekly, if not every other week, just to sit down and chat and have a cup of coffee with them. And we have meetings, we have staff meetings, we have officer meetings, operation meetings. Those are all well attended. And so there's a lot of input that's being requested from people. You'd like to think that everybody that wants information has the opportunity to receive that. But again, I think this is an ongoing process, and we're always going to be trying harder to communicate better with our people. Okay, Initiative 4, craftsmanship and leadership. Our district will operate in a manner that will recognize clear standards of performance for all positions in the organization. Standards will be reasonable and developed in collaboration with the appropriate stakeholders. Organizations shall encourage innovation and creativity in the manner they perform their duties. So it talks about a recruitment and retention task force. One does not exist. And I think we'll talk about that, one of the next objectives about our recruitment and retention efforts. So I'll skip over that. And the reason this is red is, and it could have been yellow because I think we are making some progress, but we weren't holding our members to any kind of standard. And so we had a wide range of certificate levels, abilities, knowledge, skills, and abilities. There was a wide range, and we weren't keeping up on our continuing education certification. So I think we've turned the corner. Kyle Orozco, our new training coordinator, is doing a great job in helping us strengthen our training program. So I think we're headed in the right direction. It's just something that it's going to take us time. I'm not happy where we are now, but I am happy with the progress that Matt and Kyle are making in this area. Okay. Enhance existing training program to ensure it meets the needs of the organization and the individual. The training must be needed, interesting, and fun. We're practical. All training is fun. I don't know where they get off on that, but so we are, and this ties in with the last one, we are making a lot of progress. Kyle and under the guidance of Chief House are doing a lot of good things in our training. I just put yellow on number 3, assess the status of each member's training. And again, that goes to the previous one. We're looking at it, we're assessing the status, we're just not holding them to the requirements. So that's why I put that as something that we have to work harder on. Okay. Yeah, I just love ESCI object goals. They always have something like this. Embrace organizational diversity by respecting the background, history, and tradition of the community and its demographics, while at the same time acknowledging the need to make necessary change. So the first objective there is, again, it ties into communication, and I think we're working very hard at that. Like I said, I do have an open door policy, but we're still they're still finding out, what does that mean? Are they welcome? Am I going to get angry at them for bringing a problem to me? And I think those that have come to me know that, no, I won't get angry. And I appreciate bringing a solution as well as a problem, but they know that they're learning that they can come in and talk to me or Chief House or any of the officers, and the officers can come in and talk to us. So we're still learning on that. Formally review and discuss their strategic plan. A formal review was done, and that was 2017-18, and I'll go over those results here at the end of each strategic plan review. And the third one, develop process to implement or review changes. Members are encouraged, employees and volunteers encouraged to submit their ideas. And I think one good example of that is that, we're currently staffing 24/7. And this was brought to me, the idea for doing this was brought to me by our career personnel. They thought that with the pandemic, that having 24/7 staffing was the best way to ensure that we had a proper response. So even though we were planning on doing it, it was most likely going to be into next year before we'd actually do 24/7 staffing. So I commend career staff and volunteers that brought this plan forward, and they certainly deserve a lot of the credit for that. Goal 4D, review current staff meeting practices and assess the possibility for more inclusion. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly why this is in there, what they mean by this. Identify opportunities to include additional district members in team meetings on a trial basis. Our meetings are well attended. I don't know that anybody's ever been turned away from a meeting. We have staff meetings, we have operations meetings, we have officers meetings, we have managers meetings. So I think we have enough meetings. Yeah, I think this may have addressed a problem at the time, maybe again, lack of communication, not involving people in the decision-making process. So I'm hoping that we've gotten by that. Okay. We're getting closer here, guys. Initiative 5, staffing, address the immediate and long-term staffing needs of the district. These resources will be allocated in a manner that ensures transparency, maximum effectiveness, and retention of volunteers. Establish an internal recruitment and retention committee. We don't have a committee. We did hire a recruitment and retention person. That was through a SAFER grant. SAFER stands for Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. That's a federal program. Well, they will pay for you to hire somebody that focuses on recruiting new volunteers and retaining your current volunteers. That grant was funded for 3 years. It's up in November of this year. We're thinking that we're going to transition that person to a part-time role as strictly as a recruitment person. And that will move a lot of the retention duties to our officers, where it should be. They should be working hard at retaining our volunteers. And then moving some of our HR support staff to help out with the recruitment process, setting up physicals and drug screens and making sure applications are done.
Is the SAFER grant renewable?
It typically is not. They figure they just want to get you started, and then it's up to you to continue on that. And part of the SAFER is for hiring line firefighters as well. I have heard of some agencies renewing that, but it's very rare, and there would have to be extreme circumstances to be able to do that.
Chief?
Yes.
I got a question for you. If we were to change, and this is just, I'm throwing it out, from volunteer classification to paid called firefighter, would that open the door for additional grants for training, recruitment, and equipment?
I don't know if it would enhance those. I mean, those grants are still there. I think what that does give you is that it's an incentive for people to respond if they're getting paid to do that versus volunteers who just get a stipend.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it would offer up more grant opportunities. I see a lot of the grants are more focused on strictly volunteer departments. So you may lose
Okay.
some of those grant opportunities.
Thank you.
Sure. And number 4, they utilize technologies, including social media networks, to increase their community outreach. You recently saw that new job description, the social media specialist, and certainly we'll be using that in our recruitment efforts. 5B, identify alternative roles for volunteer members that allow them to contribute and be successful to areas they have a passion for and are trained and capable of doing. And then it talks about appointing a committee to identify these alternative roles. This committee does not exist. I don't know if it ever did exist. And this is maybe a goal or objectives that I'm not real supportive of. What you end up getting are every person has different requirements, and to be not only to be a member, but to be in good standing. And similar, when I first got here, we had what were called ELFs, entry-level firefighters. And so we had partially trained firefighters on the fire scene. And I think that was done, and it may have been out of this program here, to encourage people to get in the fire department, get involved, and then take that next step. They were just never asked or forced to take that next step. So we had a lot of partially trained firefighters, which is frankly quite dangerous on a fire scene.
Yeah.
So we've been transitioning those people, encouraging them, providing support to become fully qualified as firefighters. And unfortunately, we have lost a couple people, but I think in overall the department's been strengthened.
So Chief, does that mean that somebody hasn't yet reached firefighter 1?
Correct.
And so now how many of the ELFs do we have left?
Matt, you're muted. You're still muted.
2.
Oh, that's, yeah.
All
How many
that
do we
effort just
have?
to say 2.
How many did we have a year ago? We had what, 15?
I was above 10. I don't know the exact number.
We had too many. Thanks, Matt.
Did they stay or move up or leave?
Various reasons, please see.
All of that, yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
when a person finishes the recruitment class, are they a firefighter 1 at the end of the class, or is there still progress to be made?
There's still a little bit more progress. To truly get to be a firefighter 1, they have to go through a live burn exercise as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's generally the final check off to it. And then through the state, there's DPSST, and then there's our task books internally that we have as well.
Okay, moving to 5C, ensure that the functional organizational structure of the fire district is set appropriately to meet the needs of the organization and community. That's ongoing. I know the board just reviewed our line job descriptions and approved those. So I think we're making a lot of progress on that, and we'll keep those job descriptions updated. Goal 5D, prepare district personnel for future leadership needs, and that ties in with 5C, of course. New job descriptions clearly outline the requirements for advancement, and we have those opportunities. We give those opportunities to our personnel. We'll help pay for college classes. We'll pay for training as we can afford it, and encourage our people to take advantage of that. And that fits in with our officer development plan. Requirements are stated, and we encourage our people to advance.
That's good. That's really good.
Now I'm going to go through, that's the 15 plan, goals and objectives. Now there was a update in 2018, and I just they had eight conclusions from it. I think they did another interview of employees, volunteers, community members, and they came up with these. What's going to be very interesting is they did this update together, or you can tell it was together, and probably the majority of the conclusions they reach are identical for both agencies. You'll see that once we go over Western Lane's goals and objectives. So with the update, financial forecasting and planning is essential to our long-term sustainability. We agree 100% with that, and I think we are making great progress in both forecasting and planning. Number two, we need to continue to partner with other fire districts and organizations like Western Lane Ambulance District. That is certainly ongoing. It is time to begin researching options for replacing Station 2. We're thinking that maybe not replacing it, but it does belong to the city, is maybe giving it back to the city. We are currently trying out moving our personnel from Station 2 to Station 1. That lets us consolidate our people, much easier to respond if you have enough people, as well as some of the equipment. So I think at some point in the future, we'll probably come to a recommendation with the board what we would want to do long-term with Station 2. It's extremely run down. I think we'd have to invest a lot of money to keep it up to date if we do decide to keep it, but again, that'll be a board decision. Number four, it's time to begin researching what an expanded affiliation with the ambulance district could look like. And I think from that, we got the past IGA and the current authority. Five, it is time to begin the process of establishing what response standards we want for our district through the adoption of a standard of cover. And we talked about that. That is still an outcome we need to achieve. Six, it is time to begin planning for 24-hour staffing, and we've implemented that. Seven, it is time for the district to have a greater role in EMS response. And number eight, wildland firefighting needs to become a priority to ensure our district is ready for a forest fire. So there will be any questions on SVFR. We'll have time, discussion time at the end as well, once I go through Western Lane's objectives, which are a little bit shorter.
Chief, would you explain a little bit on number 7?
It is time for the district to have a greater role in EMS response. Yeah, right. Prior to, well, several years ago, SVFR was primarily, and Matt can give a better date of when that really was in effect. Primarily, they only responded to fires. They didn't respond on EMS calls, or just the major EMS calls. And that's typically not what you see in the fire service. The fire service today is very EMS oriented. Most fire departments are going to be 70 to 90% EMS calls. Whether or not they do ALS transport, they may have a private, or in this case, we've got a public agency that does the transports. But typically, your fire departments are much more involved in EMS. And this has required an increase in certification. A lot of our firefighters were not certified medically, or they had just an EMR, which is a very basic, just a little bit above first aid certification, emergency medical responder. Matt, you want to add anything to that?
No, the only thing I would add to it is that Siasville Valley Fire has greatly increased their EMS capabilities in the last 3 to 4 years. And Western Lane has sponsored, put on a class, the EMT basic class here locally 2 years in a row, and that hadn't happened in almost 2 decades.
Yeah. So we're making progress in that one.
That's really good to hear. Oh, go ahead. Somebody else had a question.
I had a question about the last item, Chief.
Sure.
What does our department have in terms of wildland firefighting assets? Do we need, when you have this goal, what do we need? Do we need training or equipment or both?
All that, and we have we have several firefighters that are certified as wildland firefighters, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. We lose a lot of those people during the summer because they go that's how they make a living, is they'll go work for private companies or they'll get deployed. But we do encourage, we provide that training, pay for that training. We do have some wildland equipment, and that's one of the things that was approved in the capital plan, was to turn some of our pickup trucks into actually wildland vehicles where they can respond much easier to some of these rural areas. So it's been all equipment and personnel, and I think we're making pretty good progress. We work very closely with the Oregon Department of Forestry, ODF. In fact, they've really picked it up this year. Any type of wildland call that comes across, they're immediately on the radio and responding. I've heard they've even responded to a couple of our structure fires to help out. So
Good. That's good to hear.
They've been doing a great job. So
how about training with them, Chief? Have they offered up any kind of drills to do any kind of coordinated, major incident drill?
They haven't yet. We do have some of our personnel are actually working with them. So there's a lot of, hopefully they'll bring back some of that knowledge. They're mostly seasonal, or the majority of them are seasonal, I believe. But absolutely, that's not a bad idea, having doing maybe some prescribed burns or controlled burns, just to get the opportunity to work together, because we would be working side by side.
Well, and it just doesn't stop there. I mean, we should probably be looking long-term of multi-agency coordination drills, maybe, I don't know, biannually, quarterly, whatever, whether they're wildland or MCIs or whatever.
I think I know you were talking to one of the leadership guys over here.
Yes, I was.
Did he retire, or I believe somebody at the top retired? So I think we've lost a lot of the connections that we have to remake now.
And I did reach out to him, but he's been tied up in a lot of this COVID stuff.
Yeah.
Say, Chief, just a quick question on that last one as well. Would that fit under WLAG as a natural disaster, something that would be added to the WLAG group?
It would have to be a very large wildland fire. If we had to activate the Emergency Operations Center, which is what we did for the pandemic, then you have an incident commander, and then you'd be filling positions like, what are people going to do with their pets? Can we have emergency locations they can take their pets or livestock? Moving resources, moving mutual aid resources around. So WLAG would be involved, but it'd have to be a pretty big fire to do something like that.
Yeah,
usually
I was thinking you might have to even evacuate some areas or something like that. Probably fit right into their communication plan.
Yes, absolutely.
Chief, I got another question. How many of our people that are volunteers are seasonal with ODF, and how long are they employed with ODF? And could we create seasonal firefighters?
We only have one that's employed with ODF, but we have multiple that's employed with a private contractor down in Medford. Multiple being about 6 or 7, if I remember right.
And Matt, how many months out of the year are they employed?
Too many. Right now, they essentially take a leave of absence from July and don't anticipate them back until either October, depending on how dry weather, dependent, of course.
So I'm just going to throw this out. If we declared a uptick in fire season, say June 1 through November 1, could we hire part-time?
We actually, with COVID, that pushed us in that direction. Then the wildland loss of personnel pushed us even further in direction to hire part-time personnel.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure. Any more questions? SVFR, and then we'll get into Western Lane Ambulance District. Okay. So the initiative one, again, we talked about all the people we lost on the SVFR side. Chief, off chief, admin chief, fire marshal. And we also lost a couple people on the Western Lane side since the strategic plan was adopted. lost the chief executive director. In fact, we're on the third chief now, as well as the admin chief. The standard there has been having Chief House there. That's given a lot of stability, I think, to Western Lane. So initiative 1, I'm not going to read that whole thing. Goal 1A, ensure financial stability and sustainability of the organization and plan for future needs and growth. The first 4, I believe, are, I think we're understanding current financial impacts. Not to say that we all agree on those, or we did agree on where we're headed, but I think we're getting proper data. I think we can evaluate where we are and discuss it. But I think we do have a good understanding of current financial impacts, at least. And you'll see a lot of these responsible people. Julie Brown, she's no longer here. She was the admin chief at the time. Number 2, evaluation of current revenue sources. We made some progress on there and continue to make progress. For example, we adjusted transport fees. We looked at an increase for non-residents, and that was approved by the board, and that has been bringing in some additional revenue. We've got a better understanding, I think, of LifeMed as a revenue source and where those funds are going and what's coming in. Again, we can do better, and we will do better on that. Identifying new revenue sources. Again, that's an ongoing process. That's why it's yellow. We'll continue to do that. I know we were having some discussions with some of the assisted living facilities concerning lift assist, because they tend to use the ambulance district as extra people to come lift up some of their residents. And we're happy to do that, but in my mind, it is a gifting of public funds when we do that, and we don't get paid for that. We don't charge for that. Absolutely, we're happy to do it and provide a service, but only when they're fully staffed, they're meeting their staffing requirements, then should they call and ask for help from us. So we have talked to them about maybe having a standard fee per bed, just things like that we're trying to look at. We haven't had a lot of positive responses from that, but we're continuing to work. I think this also includes our mobile integrated healthcare plan, the MIH plan. That's fully funded for at least the next 2 years. I don't see Peace Harbor ever taking their support from that. It's such a great program, and it certainly is saving Peace Harbor a lot of money, as well as helping our citizens, our patients as well.
Chief, do we have specific goals here? Like, are we lobbying or keeping track of expanding like the GMT, which would be a huge amount of money for us? I mean, does that get on our radar here somewhere?
So I'm a part of the Oregon State Ambulance Association, which is a private lobbyist group. Mainly all the privates go to this group, and the public sector is allowed to be there and vote with it. In the public sector, we have what's called the Fire Defense Board or the EMS sections chiefs meetings. Public are allowed to come, but they're not allowed to vote in that. So we are a part of the private sector with it, with those meetings. In fact, I was in one 2 weeks ago, and we get the feedback from the state level, what's been lobbying. We have a voice. I vote on things, and usually I'm in line with the fire districts and what they vote on, and versus kind of what the public agencies do. But you are spot on with the GMT. That was another one that we have actually looking for additional resources that we're able to add. You know, again, we're just finishing up our second year right now.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Welcome.
So goal 1B, consider a renewal of a levy. Again, remember this was 2016-17 timeframe, so they were just renewing or thinking about renewing the levy at that time. Number 1, contrast the financial needs and service capabilities with and without a renewed levy. Without a renewed levy, that's pretty easy. Right now, that accounts for about 25% of our budget. So if your personnel services are 75, 80%, it's very tough to take a 25% cut. So renewing the levy is very important for us. I have been talking to Liz Loomis about coming on board and helping us with the next levy renewal, which is coming up very quickly. In fact, the board is going to have to decide whether or not they want to go for a May or November of 2021 renewal election. Whether they want to do a simple renewal, whether or not they're thinking they want to increase it. Again, that's all up to the board to decide, but it's something that we have to start moving on very quickly. Liz recommends if we want to go for May, we start in August. So we're already behind if we want to do that. I know we have a lot of other things going on right now which impact us going out for this, but it's something that I think we have to start discussing with the boards. 1C, evaluate the feasibility of a shared services approach to managing the district. Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this. I've got it in yellow, meaning that we've made some progress, but a lot to do. I could make this green or make it blue, I guess, because that's a combination of green and yellow. I think we've made a lot of progress. I think we're doing very good with this shared services approach. This was more, should there be a shared feasibility study, an official study, and one was never commissioned. Although we did get a lot of input from the interim chief, Steve Abel, Terry Nye, who did it with Lane Fire Authority. So we got a lot of outside information and input. And then that led to the IGA and then formation of the authority. I think a lot of this discussion will go into, next week, we're going to be talking about consolidation merger, not to make a decision about whether we do that, but just what would it entail and to get some feedback from board members. We've been working very hard at getting feedback from our employees the last couple of weeks, and I'll share that with the directors on consolidation and a merger. So even though I think this is yellow, we've made a lot of progress in this area. Goal 1B, develop and maintain comprehensive facilities, apparatus, equipment, and funding plan. We do have a capital and funding or facility replacement plan and improvement, which was adopted by the board. And the board's been able to look at that. And number 2 there, evaluate the existing facility to meet the current needs. I think that led to a remodel. I don't think we're thinking about any more remodeling. There has been some discussion, do we need to add a bay at that base? And when we do talk about that, it could be for an ambulance, it could be for a fire engine, depending on where, consolidation merger talks go. If we wanted to spread out our ALS resources and then spread out our fire suppression resources at the same time. So that's going to be in the future, but it is something that we're watching very closely. Most of our facilities are starting to show their age. So for both SVFR and Western Lane, so we're making sure that we're putting proper funds aside to help maintain those buildings.
And Chief,
Yeah.
I just got a question. If you were to add another bay, that would help with taking the place of Station 2, correct? Because you're only looking at a very short travel distance for that apparatus?
If we put a fire engine there, absolutely. And it's important. I don't know if you've been. Most of you probably have been down to the ambulance space, but we're parking a lot of vehicles outside. I mean, we're using the room there as much as so. It's. And I don't know if everybody knows, but we do not own that land. That land belongs to Peace Harbor. The building is ours. But they own the land. They're very, very interested in us staying there. It provides them a great service to have us there, and we have no desire to leave, but certainly spreading out our resources could be smart.
So Chief, a quick question. If we were to consolidate services and maybe do a formal merger, is that lease assignable or assumable, I would say?
Yeah. And I was talking to Rick not too long ago about that. We need to readdress that lease It expired many years ago.
No, you actually don't. I've actually read through that. That lease automatically converts and terms out.
It
We
wasn't
have
very,
an-
yeah, it
we
wasn't
have an
very
indefinite
clear.
lease. It is indefinite. It
Yeah,
goes
well,
on
okay,
and
well,
on.
that's, I mean, that's, and there would be, I know there's no desire in us to leave or for
Yeah,
them to have us leave.
but anyway, I don't know if we change entity status, whether we would have the same lease. It's something to think about.
Oh, absolutely. We would, I'd be amazed if they said, no, we don't want the ambulances there anymore. And essentially that would be it. Could they be worried about a fire engine going through their parking lot? Well, maybe we can get access on 9th Street, directly to 9th Street versus going through the campus.
That was my question. What is the current footprint of the lease that we have? Does it include more land than just the footprint of the building's foundation, or?
Yeah, it goes all the way out to 9th Street. It's almost an acre. But there's also an Oak Street right on the east side of it, where when we were looking at expanding the station there, we would have to put in the street improvements, which would have caused Peace Health to do some additional work on their side, bringing water lines and things in that way. But it provided a good access to 9th Street. It was something to consider.
Well, can we, for example, do a bay addition next to the bays that are there to the west or not?
It's got quite a bit of slope to that side, so it would take some groundwork, but I think that is the closer to the property line or closer to the lease line than going to the north.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I would just say that I think we really do need to review that lease. I did see a document from Pat Kirby not too long ago that showed that it may have been redrafted, the boundaries, and maybe much less space than we originally had, based on an amendment. So, and Mike's right. The way it's worded, it sounds like it's for a perpetual lease, like it re-ups every year for 30 years. So it's a rolling 30-year, but I think that also needs to be clarified because it's not very clear in the document. I would actually add that as a review on our facilities planning.
Yeah.
And also ask if the board.
Let's stay on task, guys.
So I'm trying to, John, but I think it's important that we address that, and it's got to be on there. And also, I would suggest that we add the surplus property if we decide we're going to stay there. Are we going to make a determination on that surplus property across from the fire station?
Yeah, that's future planning, absolutely. Okay, goal 1E, address current and future resource needs. And this is looking at both financial and personnel as resources. Hire an executive director, which you got to fire an EMS chief. The second and third one, current resource needs as they relate to growth and response demand. And I got this in yellow. I think we are very focused on what we're doing now in the next year. I think we've talked a little bit about what's going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, but I think it would be nice to have much more in-depth discussions, maybe bring city personnel in. What kind of growth are we expecting? There does seem to be a lot of residential growth, or at least apartments, certainly some assisted living facilities. All that's going to be a bigger impact on both the ambulance and fire districts. But would the additional property tax, which comes from that, pay for the additional demand? And typically it doesn't. So I think that's something that we have to look at and watch very carefully. The last couple were to establish a succession plan for executive director position. It's likely that if that position were to open, and hopefully not for a long or many years, but if it did, it would be a matter of, I assume the board would go externally like they did before. Typically, that's what you do for this size agencies and CEO positions. Doesn't mean that we don't have great internal candidates, and we probably would, and they'd be encouraged. I think for development, and we are working on developing our internal people. Again, that comes back to our job descriptions. This is what we expect from certain levels, specific levels, and then encourage our people to to meet those qualifications for those levels, and depending on what they want to do with their careers. And I've had that discussion with Matt and Dina and other of my people is, what do you want to be when you grow up, and how can we help you get there? So it's something it's important. And if that were to happen, I think we'd be prepared for who takes over and how we get those people in. Very last one, evaluate need for additional administrative support. I think I'm very comfortable with my administrative, the amount of people we have, the quantity, and the quality is fantastic. There's no issues there. We do have a part-time administrative support person that we're looking at maybe expanding, maybe adding a few hours onto her duties each week. Like I said, they're all doing great, and we're piling more work onto them, and they've taken it and run with everything we've given them. So I don't think we have to add people, but I think we may expand some of the current duties. Initiative 2, service and community outreach. Develop a systematic approach to disseminating information to the public. A lot of this you'll see is yellow. Main reason was we've got names of people that aren't with us anymore. So we have to reassign a lot of these duties. Danielle Hansen, she's on leave right now. We're hoping she comes back. We don't know if she's going to come back. Al Creets is not here anymore. Rob here, but he's really been moved. Rob Chance, he's been moved to a training role and is doing great with training. So all of these are, and this again applies to communication, and are extremely important. We just need to make sure that we have people assigned to it, and that we give them the support that they need. Again, 2 goes back to the levy strategy for 2017. And we can just change that to 2021 because we know that's coming up. Number 3, with the social media, we know we need to enhance our presence on social media, so we're working on that. And then I think and Matt, you can probably talk to this if you're still there, about some of the stuff we're doing with the schools. I know we've been very active with that.
Well, prior to COVID, Danny was really influential working with the schools with the health occupational programs that they have at the schools. And what the health occupational program is that these students, where they learn basic remedial biology, medical stuff, then they go out to the outlying areas in the community, us, fire department, surgery. They actually go into surgeries and participate, watch, monitor. So she was great in teaching the CPR, first aid, and some of what is it like to be a paramedic. But we didn't do anything this year because, of course, school was canceled with the COVID. Yeah. And we're looking at next year, when school gets back up, is that something we can re-entertain and be a part of?
I like that, Matt. I think that's real smart that you're cultivating a younger age bracket to get into emergency medicine. And I wish we would do that on the fire side as well.
We're Jim, we're the Boys and Girls Club are bringing over some of their students tomorrow, I believe. And where we're going to have the opportunity to, hey, this is what it takes to be a firefighter or paramedic, EMT. And this is what you need to do to prepare yourself. Absolutely. Those are our future employees and volunteers.
Absolutely. And if you can group them together so they get a little bit of fire and EMS together, they're going to be able to pick and choose what road they want to go down.
Yeah, I think we're doing both. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Tomorrow is both, but we also have other things that we participate in with the fire department and EMS, educating what we're about and how we are different health occupations, job fairs. We're at all those places educating when they come through.
That's really good to hear, guys. Thanks.
Sure. And then goal 2B, again, provide community outreach education. It's just yellow because we need to reassign those duties. Danielle did a fantastic job. It's just, we have a lot of people that are interested in this. I don't think it's going to be difficult to find someone that wants to do this. Our people are very community oriented, so we just need to reassign those duties. Okay, working with community healthcare partners, establish an integrated healthcare system. So a lot of this has to do with our QRT, or quick response teams upriver. So we're very supportive of Mapleton and Swiss Home Deadwood individuals, making sure they're qualified to help when an ambulance responds to their areas. Also with our mobile integrated healthcare plan, our healthcare program, which is doing great. Chris did a great job, and Wendy took over. She's doing a great job. We're actually even thinking, do we need to expand that program? Again, this is completely supported by grant from Peace Harbor, Peace Health System. And I think at some point we need to talk to them. Can we expand it a little bit? I think there's almost a need. I think there is a need for a 7-day-a-week MIH person. And of course, Wendy needs a couple days off every once in a while, but I think a part-timer could be very helpful. And I've talked to Wendy about that, and I think down the road, we'll hopefully bring something to the board and start some discussions with Peace Harbor on that. Initiative 3, staffing craftsmanship. Address the staffing needs on the front lines of service delivery. Again, I think a lot of this resulted in the addition of the 5th full-time position, which we know we need. We know with increased demands on our service, we're going to have to start thinking about what's our next step. What are we going to do? Do we have to increase staffing even more? We're going to have to increase our part-time pool as well, just to support the part-timers that we use now. Anything you want to add on that, Matt? I think that had to do with the 5th full-time position.
Yeah, a lot of this also stemmed from when the board approved the residency in district residency requirement for employees. That how do we make sure that we have still in district and part-time, full-time employees to help backfill and surge events. So that's where we looked at, yes, we need to go to 5, but we also need to develop within the system. And Mike, you were part of that. If I'm offline, please correct me, but that's where I remember some of that being generated out of this.
Definitely.
Yeah. So goal 3B, develop a succession plan for the supervisor position and any future mid-level manager positions. First 2 been completed, create a system for training, evaluating, acting in charge, or AIC. We do have AIC personnel that fill in for the captains if a captain is not present on the shift. We do have a process for hiring our supervisors. Our supervisors right now are our most experienced people. They're doing a great job. Hopefully they'll stick with us for a long time, but not a lot of movement there, and I'm okay with that. You like your supervisors to be very experienced. Provide training for supervisors to function at a higher level position. I think we need to improve on our job descriptions and provide what do they need to do if they want to go to a higher position. And I know there's not a lot of movement or spots available, but I think if they want to develop, we're certainly supportive of that, especially in leadership roles. The 4th one, create a field training officer program. You'll hear that called the FTO program. We have a great field training officer program in place. Pretty much all new members are turned over to Rob Chance, our training coordinator, and he puts them through proper training and clearance, so that's working great. And again, we need to review and update job descriptions. I think last time they were updated was probably about the time this was adopted. So every couple of years, you should go through your job descriptions. So it's about time to do that. Improve mutual aid relationships and resources. Reestablish relations with mutual aid partners and maintain those relationships. Certainly, I think they've been maintained. I wasn't involved in reestablishing, but we have, I think, great relationships with our neighbors, especially our mutual aid neighbors. In fact, we had to use Lower Umpqua yesterday afternoon. We just got slammed with calls and transfers. It was crazy for about an hour, I guess. And I know Matt put Lower Umpqua on standby for us, which was absolutely the correct thing to do. So it was, we are trying to maintain those relationships with our mutual aid partners. Mutual aid training exercises annually. I don't know that we're still doing that. Matt, maybe you can respond to that. I don't think we're doing that. It's very tough. All our neighbors are far enough away that it's tough to plan for some mutual aid training or together. Maybe on an annual basis, it's something that we should at least go meet our neighbors. Especially, if lower income is going to be responding up here, or we're going to be responding there, or Yahats, we should probably be working more with them. I don't know, Matt, if you wanted to add to that.
I'm just trying to think of the last time we actually did a training with our mutual aid partners, which was mainly with the paramedic and the critical care, Derek, and I think maybe Rob went over there to train on how to use IV pumps. But as for mass casualty drills, it's always been the region training when we've had also Swiss Home Dead with Mapleton participate and all police, but nothing really outside of our ASA.
Yeah, which I think is it's okay. It's a nice to have, I think. Goal 3D, and this is the last one, provide appropriate training to all personnel to enhance their skills in the field and the office. We don't have, we have a training coordinator, Rob Chance. He's doing a fantastic job. I know you've heard me say that. He's taken over from some people that were doing a good job as well. So I think our training program, our QA, quality assurance, quality improvement program is doing very well. And I've been impressed with, from top to bottom, the training that's provided, continuing education that's provided, and everything about our training program. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything on that either, Matt.
Just following up that it's done. I mean, we have a training committee that meets on the best guess, quarterly, but we try to meet at least bi-monthly or monthly and go over topics on what we can do to make sure that we're getting the training needed.
Okay, so that was the goals and objectives for Western Lane. And again, at the end, I'll give you my recommendations where we need to go and open for discussion. So for the 2018 plan update, there were 6 for Western Lane Ambulance District, and you have heard a lot of these, if not most of them, from SVFR as well. First one, financial forecasting and planning is essential to our long-term sustainability, and that applies to both departments. And I think we are very aware of that, and I think we're working very hard on that. We need to continue to partner with other organizations like SVFR and Peace Health. Agree that is still ongoing for us. It is time to begin researching options for replacing our district facility. I think we've gone maybe to the next step. We're not really replacing our district facility, maybe expanding our current facility, certainly not moving to a different location. But it's certainly taking care of our current facility. Excuse me. It is time to begin researching what an expanded affiliation with SVFR could look like. Again, we'll be talking a lot about that next week. It is time to begin the process of establishing what response standards we want for our district through the adoption of a standard of cover. That's critical. I mean, what do we want our response characteristics to be? And then to establish those and then hold ourselves to those. And then the last one, which you really could have been for SVFR, and I'm surprised it wasn't because it is very important, but we need to research and thoroughly understand what future impact the public retirement system could have on our district and our employees in the future. And you may have got that email today from me. I think it was today. I said we have a PERS employee that's going to come talk to us on Thursday, August 20th. So we'll learn more about PERS.
Good.
So discussion about Western Lane, strategic plan review. Or questions, I mean. Okay. Here
do you want suggestions at all at this point?
More questions. I mean,
okay.
if you're talking about, we need to develop a new plan or something like that,
No.
that's part of my recommendations, but really this is just to review the strategic plans. Maybe
Yeah.
after I go through my recommendations, if you, anything else you want to say, you'd be welcome.
Okay.
So staff recommendations, we should immediately begin a new strategic planning process. And I think it should be under the WLFEA banner, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But I think you can see that we've completed most of those objectives or made tremendous progress, or they just don't apply anymore. And so I think typically a strategic plan, you shoot for the 3 to 5 year range. I think, well, we exceeded that. I think it shows in that a lot of our objectives are not pertinent anymore. So I think it is time to start thinking about a new one. We could either go with LCOG, or we could go with ESCI. I think an outside facilitator makes this much easier on staff to do that, and so I would recommend that. Typically, you're looking at 6 to 9 months to do that. I don't know what COVID, the pandemic, what kind of impact that would have on the time frame. It may push us closer out to the 9-month one, end of that timeline. I hope not, but we certainly have discussions with the facilitator. The reason I think it should be under WLFEA, that because that is our administrative body right now. Goals could be agency specific, or they could apply to the authority. For example, sharing resources would be a WLFEA objective, but then underneath that, you could have something like certify all fire personnel in ambulance operations, so we could easily use them as a driver or extra pair of hands in the back of an ambulance. On the Western Lane side, maybe certify Western Lane employees as for those who want to be firefighters, help certify them as firefighters. So in the event that we need more firefighters, we could use Western Lane people to do that. Emphasis on volunteer recruitment and retention, that would be an SVFR specific goal, since Western Lane doesn't use volunteers. And then preparing for a 2020 levy election, again, that would be specific for Western Lane. So there'd be a combination of authority, which would apply to both agencies, and then still goals and objectives for each agency. And then separate consolidation discussions to be held. I mean, we have to do all this concurrently, and so we would start doing that. And of course, a lot of that's going to depend on some of our discussion next week. But I think we have to start stacking things, not only do a strategic plan through WLFEA and then each agency, but start looking at where we want our next step to be, consolidation or merger. And again, this is nothing that's going to happen next week or next month. It may be years before if we do decide to go down that path, how we get there. But I think it's definitely things that we need to start talking about. So now we are open to almost at 6:30. Questions, comments, suggestions?
I think this has been very valuable.
Oh, yeah.
So Chief, I just want to understand, I guess, so your recommendation is to update the strategic plan under a single banner like WLFEA, and then have goals for each agency would be spelled under that plan.
If they only apply to one agency, yeah, it would be specific for that agency. Similar to what, well, you don't normally see that in a strategic plan, but I think it would apply here and it would be fine. So it wouldn't be only WLFEA objectives. There could be some Western Lane Ambulance District objectives and some SVFR objectives. We're still two separate agencies. We still have two separate needs and requirements. So yeah, there would be some separate objectives.
But in effect, you'd have a single strategic plan then. That's what you're envisioning. Okay, that's all I needed to know. This has been great. Thanks.
Sure.
But Chief, isn't some of this what you're putting in your recommendation? Putting the cart before the horse? I mean, WLFEA's objective and strategic planning right now should be concentrating on administration of both departments.
And it would, John, you're absolutely right. So there's not going to be, none of the objectives would consider that we're one organization. I don't know if that makes sense, but just those, I mean, WLFEA should have a strategic plan. What are our goals and objectives? But it's not going to specifically pertain to things that don't exist, like one agency. We're not a consolidated. We haven't merged. That is still to be debated. So yeah, there would be 3 sets of objectives, some just for WLFEA. And I guess some of those objectives may not apply to Western Lane and SVFR. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but maybe administrative development type of.
So if we do a strategic plan under the WLFEA banner, if things don't pan out and WLFEA is disbanded, we go back to fire and we go back to ambulance, you could basically take out the objectives that pertain to each organization and have a strategic plan.
Yeah, some of those objectives just wouldn't apply to Western Lane or SVFR. Yeah, absolutely, John.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, this is not committing either side to anything. It's just we have 3 agencies. Let's put objectives in place for all 3 agencies.
I think what you're proposing too, Chief, kind of just follows the organizational chart as well. It seems to be rather cohesive and it makes sense.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, I think I lost my agenda. There it is. So if that's no further comments, I mean, really, this was just supposed to be a review. I wasn't expecting a lot of comments, but great questions, great discussions. Next week on the 13th, we're going to be talking about consolidation merger. And really, this is it's not to plan how we're going to do a consolidation or merger. It's not to agree to do a consolidation merger. It's more of just when we say consolidation or merger, what are you thinking of? What are your hopes about it? What are your fears about it? We've been doing that with our employees and volunteers and getting some great feedback from them. I know and this is putting the cart before the horse in many cases, John. I agree. Because I know the employees, one of their comments will show us the plan and then we'll comment on it. Well, yeah, we want to develop the plan, but we want to know what needs to be in the plan to address any of their fears. And so we are getting some good feedback from people. They are being honest with us. Some people are using it as an opportunity to vent, and that's okay. I can live with that. But I think the input has been valuable. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with the board next week. And then we'll also be, the board will have opportunity, all the directors will have opportunity to say what their hopes or fears about a merger or consolidation. And then I'm hoping out of that discussion, we can either decide to agree on a timeline or move forward or not move forward. John, was that you?
Yeah, Chief, on the 13th, are you going to bring any of the what-fors, the how-tos, and the big hurdles we would have?
Yeah, I think, I was going to show an organizational chart, maybe talk about some of the timelines, maybe give some possible recommendations. I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't think it's appropriate at that time for the board to make a decision whether or not we're going to do it or not. There's a lot of things we need to do, but I do hope to bring some information. I do have some information on, I know one of the concerns was we might lose the health district. And I think I've got some Oregon state statutes that deal with that very directly. So share that with the board and look at some possible organizational charts. Say again, John?
Will you have any of the things how we would deal with Swiss Home, Deadwood, and Mapleton Fire and things like that?
Yep, that's
okay.
That's directly mentioned in those statutes. So I'm not going to give everything away, but it's not a hurdle at all for us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are you going to serve refreshments?
Virtual ones.
I hope so. Yes. And then on August 20th, we're going to have a presentation by PERS. She's an actuarial specialist. I forget what her title title is. You CPAs will probably be all over that, but she's going to come talk to us. The only thing that she doesn't feel comfortable with would be describing the benefits. And we told her this is not about benefits. It's just about unfunded liability and the future of rates. And this is right up her alley. So I'm looking forward to hearing her presentation and then allowing the directors to ask any questions they want to ask. Good. Okay. Any other comments?
Nice job, Chief.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Very informative.
Timing worked out perfectly. I appreciate everybody giving up their Thursdays on this. And if there's nothing else, I think we'll say goodnight.
Good night.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
Good job, Matt.
Later.